We're here today to go through servicing the Rhinox Autolock Quick Hitch. The first stage would be to take out the bucket pins that come with the Quick Hitch. Some machines have an Allen cap screw in the end, some have a bolt-on pin through a boss. In this instance today, these are removed with a ratchet through the Allen cap screw, or we can use an impact gun as well for speed. We also remove the washer which locates the pin. For this model it uses an 8mm Allen key. We can remove the two pins, put them to one side. This then gives us access into the coupler mechanism. Once the bucket pins have been removed, we can then remove the crown on the rear latch. This will allow us to get to more of the mechanism to be able to change some of the parts. For this we remove the cap screw on top. Before we remove the cap screw, it's important to bring the latch into an open position. To open the latch, what we'll do is we'll use the bar supplied with the Quick Hitch and we'll push the safety pin over to the side, and we will insert a shim or a small piece of steel into the gap. We'll just tap that in and that just keeps the safety pin from popping into the coupler body. We'll then, again with an impact gun with an 8mm Allen key, we can remove the cap screw. Inside there is two washers, which are called a Autolock washer, which is a locking mechanism. It's important to keep them two safe and in the right orientation, and we can remove the crown off the latch. It's important to keep all the parts together, ready for reassembly. Before we remove the latch, what we can do is we can use a smaller bolt into the safety pin mechanism just to stop it closing again, which will just make it far easier to reassemble. We'll just pop that into there for now, and that does away with the shim. From there we can remove the bolt on the bottom of the latch pin, which allows the latch pin to be removed. This typically takes a 16mm socket. Again, we can use the impact gun. This again has two Autolock washers. Again, it's important to keep them to one side so they're not lost or damaged. And we can then remove the pin from here. This pin has a washer on this side, so we've just got to knock that through to get the pin out. What we can do is we can use the bolt, reinsert it for 2 to 3 threads, and we can just tap that through and then re-remove. Then from the opposite side we should be able to remove the pin with a large set of pliers, and that comes out quite easy. From there the latch mechanism here will drop away from the spring at the front, and then that can be removed. Using a soft hammer we can just tap the latch free, and out comes the latch assembly with the die spring and rod. From here the die spring comes off the rod. This rod can be removed. There is a grub screw down here. Most of these parts will be Loctited in, so they will take a little bit of force just to break them off. To remove them, the two grub screws here and here. This will allow the pin to be removed, which removes the die spring rod, should that need changing. And also there is another pin which is used for the activation finger in the deadlock mechanism. This pin may wear over time, but again is replaceable by removing the small grub screw here. The safety pin is sprung loaded, so there's a spring in the internal cavity of the latch. This is held in with a pin on the top. If that pin is removed, the safety pin will eject, but it is captive in this position and it can't come out. When reassembling the parts, it's important to use quality thread locking compound to ensure the screws don't come out. It's also important to note that the smaller pins have a little divot in it where the grub screw should locate. This is to stop the pin from rotating and coming loose. So this needs aligning with the hole when reinserting. We can then apply a small amount of Loctite to the threads, and we can now assemble the die spring rod back in. Again, this has got a dimple in which we need to align, and again we'll apply some Loctite. So the two other pins that are remaining in the coupler when it has been stripped down, one is the pivot pin which the rod of the die spring fits into. This typically doesn't have to come out for servicing. Should it need to, there is a circlip at either side. Once the rod is assembled in, this pin cannot actually come out because the rod keeps it central. And also there is another small pin here which is for the activation finger on the inside of the coupler. Again, once fully assembled, that pin cannot actually come out and it is held in with two circlips, one on either side. To reassemble the coupler, it's just a reverse operation of removing it. So first we'll depress the safety pin and we'll insert a small bolt into there. This just allows us to reassemble it a little bit easier. We'll then tip the coupler up. One thing it is worth noting is to make sure the activation finger is in the up position when we insert the latch. This is to ensure that it falls into this pocket here and meets the pin it works with when in operation. Keep the rod pointing down and we'll lift the finger up. Once the latch is partly inserted, use a soft faced hammer just to bring the latch up, just so it sits into the top of the coupler. We'll then fit the die spring and washer. So that just slides onto the rod here. And then we rotate the bar at the top that it fits into. Once the rod goes into the bar, again we'll just tap that up with a hammer. The activation finger needs to be above the pin. So it's important that the activation finger is below the pin here for when the latch goes back in. And then we can assemble the rod that holds the die spring. We can just ease that in to its position and we can then continue to fit the latch until the latch pin hole lines up at the top. Once that lines up, we can put the latch pin back in. Until that goes into its captive pocket to stop it rotating. At that point, the safety pin will snap back into its hole and we can then reassemble the bolt on the side. We can then reassemble the latch pin. We'll put the locking bolt back in. It's important to make sure that the node lock washers are in the correct orientation as they have different teeth. The finer teeth should be on the inside which meet each other, and the more coarse teeth should be on the outside. One will meet with the bolt and one will meet with the washer. For good measure, you can apply a little amount of Loctite. You can use the impact gun to tighten that up. We can then reassemble the crown on top of the latch. When reassembling the rear latch crown, it's important to make sure it goes back in the same order. So there is this little top hat which sits inside of the crown, and then the cap screw that goes inside again has a node lock washer or two node lock washers. Ensure that the serrations are the same way as already mentioned on the latch pin, and again we'll apply a small amount of Loctite to that thread. We'll drop the crown on top, make sure the top hat fits into its hole, and then we can reassemble the cap screw. On this coupler there is a locating peg for the pin, and we then fit a stepped washer with a cap screw on the outside. These again could be set with Loctite when fitting to the excavator, just to stop them vibrating loose, and then we would tighten appropriately. Thanks for watching this video on how to service the Rhinox Autolock Coupler. For more information, watch the other videos on the Autolock Coupler here. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the Rhinox channel.